My name is Gillian. I'm a compulsive eater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the grey sheet. I write those meals down, I commit them to my sponsor, and abstinence is most definitely the most important thing in my life every day. And my abstinence date is the 24th of May 2018. And I still actually count days. So today is 902 days. And that is definitely a gift from God for sure. And I wrote down some stuff because I feel a bit muddled tonight and I don't want muddled thinking. But I think what I noticed most about this meeting is the amount of newcomers on here. So I'm trying to direct this qualification of people who are coming in. And I think I'm putting myself in back to the way I felt when I came into GreySheet first. I came in briefly and I thought it was all very strange, and I left for a few years. I went out, but it always stayed in my head. Because I saw people who were actually losing weight, and losing weight was the holy grail for me. That's what I wanted, and I saw that in a physical way, people were changing. You know, they were dropping huge amounts of weight, and but I think when I came back into GreySheet, I came back in with a different attitude, which I will explain why and how a bit later. But I think for the newcomer, what I didn't understand when I came into this the second time around, and I was very serious about it the second time around, was that the craving was going to go away. I didn't understand that. I thought that I was going to have to spend the rest of my life eating 3 meals and white knuckling it between those 3 meals, and that crazy head hunger wouldn't go away. And for me, it went away after 3 days, and it's never really come back. Occasionally it comes back a little bit, but I always see that as a sign to do more meetings, to do more 12-step work, and then it just goes away again. And that to me is the greatest miracle, that I can actually live like that. I can live in with regards to food, I have peace. I move from one meal to another very peacefully. And somebody was qualifying on a meeting I go to on Saturday, and they were talking about, they described it very beautifully, and I'm not going to be able to describe it the way this person did, but they were talking about how, and we've heard this a lot with GreySheeters, our meals are a very spiritual occasion. It's a very calming time. I find that it's a very calming time. And I suppose my urges that I like to eat on my own, I try not to. I try to eat with my family, but I just find it's a very peaceful, private time with my higher power. And I never thought food would be like that. And I find preparing my food very therapeutic, whereas before anything to do with food was highly stressful to me. I hated cooking. I was either restricting or binging. I was always one or the other. So if I was restricting, I wanted to be nowhere near food, and if I was binging, cooking food just took too long. I just wanted things out of packets, like stuff. Like I needed it fast before I started to think about maybe I should stop doing this. I needed to ram it down. So there was never a good relationship with food, really, I have to say, outside of GreySheet. GreySheet has become, you know, it just really is a miracle in my life on so many levels. And I suppose if I direct that to the newcomers on the meeting, or indeed people who are struggling, that's what I would really wish for you, that you experience that God gives you that, and the very fact that you're here shows that that's what you want. And yeah, I just really pray that you all receive that gift, and this is a beautiful way of life, and it just keeps getting better. That's the other amazing thing about this. More things will be revealed as they are. So that's where I am at the moment. So, but just to go back to and I'm sort of conscious that there are people here who've heard my qualification a million times, so I don't want to keep going back over similar ground. But I do believe I came into the world hardwired as a compulsive overeater. I was a big baby, I was told. Obviously, I have no memory of that, but I was born nearly 10 pounds, and I had a reputation for eating even as a baby. My grandmother took great pleasure in telling me how much I ate and how it was difficult to keep me fed and da-di-da-di-da and all this kind of thing. But yeah, and as time went on, I ate. There were no other compulsive eaters in my family. There were alcoholics, but not compulsive eaters. I don't know if there's a correlation between that, because you know, for me, alcohol has never been something that I've been interested in. Food has always been my drug of choice, but I think there may be something, some kind of, I don't know, connection. I'm not sure, with just addictions maybe. But I've long ago stopped wondering why or how or why me, or it doesn't seem to be relevant anymore. I just know for sure that I'm a compulsive eater, and that this, on a daily basis, I get a reprieve by following this food plan. And because of that, I definitely want to do this for the rest of my life. I never want to go back to that way of living again. But yeah, sorry, I'm digressing. But yeah, so I didn't start to put weight on until probably I was around 11 or 12, until I hit puberty. I think that's when the weight started to show up. But I did start to notice, like when I was with cousins. I'm from Ireland and we have very big families, so, or at least we did in the past. And I had a lot of cousins, and I never, there was never another child that ate the way I did. I did notice that, and they didn't seem to view food the way I did it. It was just sort of fuel that had to be ate, and then they went off about their business. Where it meant an awful lot more to me, and I could see. Yeah, I wasn't able to really put that into words or clarify it for myself, but I can see looking back that food, I didn't view food the way normal people do. And I always wanted more. There was never enough. I was always ashamed of how much I ate. And when I say there was never enough, it wasn't that I wasn't fed. There was plenty of food in the house, but there just, no amount of food would be enough. And you know, I could eat and eat and eat and feel sick and still want to eat more. It was like an insatiable, once I got into that sort of whirligig of eating, there was nothing would you know, end it. In the end, you know, many nights I can remember going to bed and my stomach was so stuffed. I found it difficult to lie in a comfortable position. And the weird thing about that is, and I think there's a science behind this, you go to bed feeling absolutely stuffed, thinking, well, at least I'll wake up in the morning and I won't feel hungry. But you wake up absolutely ravenous. It's a strange thing. Whereas if you go to bed hungry, you wake up and you've no interest in food. It's a very weird thing. But yeah, so then as I went into my teens, I began to use diets to kind of to fix the weight gain, you know, as people started to notice my weight, and I began to feel ashamed of that. And initially I was quite good at dieting. You know, I had, you know, if there was a party coming up or it was Christmas or a wedding, I was able to go, and I went on some really crazy diets. And I think that's part of this. The more I dieted, the worse the kickback became. The binges after the diet began as I hit my 20s to become quite frightening. I was quite scared of the way I was eating. It was like an elastic band stretching when I was dieting, and I knew at some point that band would snap and the binge would just be unmerciful. And when I was binging like that, I felt just like I wasn't able to stop. I just didn't have any control. And that went on right into my 20s. And I did many different things apart from dieting. I did things like relocating, thinking that would change it. Like I took a year out and I went to New York as an au pair when I was 18. And I thought this massive change of location would fix it. You know, somehow if I found myself in a completely alternative environment, it would make me rethink the way I was eating. And actually the opposite happened. That's when I really began to binge, because it was the first time in my life that I had a room of my own and an income, and I was able to eat in secret. Whereas when I was living at home, I was sharing a room, and I wasn't.
10 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. So I better start wrapping this up. So yeah, so you get the idea. There's all of that going on. And then I discovered OA, and that was after I moved to London. There's a lot of OA meetings. As anybody who lives around London, you could go to OA live meetings. This is pre-COVID. Yeah, you could go to them several times a day in several parts of London. But the weird thing about, not to criticize OA, because, you know, I met a lot of very good people who were, you know, doing their best, but OA is absolutely packed with people, but nobody has abstinence. That's my experience of it. And because there's very little abstinence, there's very few people who are able to sponsor, and it's just like it's compounding. And for a time, I did get some relief in OA, but because I was allowed to choose my own food plan, I was still eating foods that I now know I'm allergic to. So there wasn't a very long-term relief, not like the long-term relief I found in GreySheet. But what I did see in OA was people who had spiritual awakenings. And I can think of at least 3 people who came into the rooms, and over a period of time, they changed because of the 12 steps. They turned into different people, and I found that very attractive. And then I came back into GreySheet. I found an amazing sponsor, and the second time I came back in, I think largely due to her, I had been listening to her qualifying on recordings of her on YouTube, and I just got a sense of her and her peace and her sanity. And I really felt if I could work with her, I'd be okay. And it felt like too much to wish for. She's in America, and it took me a while to track her down. And I sent her an email, and we're in different time zones, and she responded within 10 minutes and told me that she would sponsor me. And she has become such a good friend, you know, kind of moved beyond sponsor-sponsee kind of relationship. But she is an amazing lady. And once I began to work with her, a huge sense of peace. And again, I'm directing this at newcomers. This sense of worrying about weight, because I lost 85 pounds over a period of my first 10 months in GreySheet. But that obsession with weight loss as well went. I just felt very relaxed. I felt I could just forget about that. And my weight steadily went down every single week. I think there was 1 week in that 10 months where my weight just stayed the same. Every other week it just went down. And I know that's not everyone's experience, so I'm not saying that's general for GreySheet, but that was my particular experience. Yeah, and so in wrapping up, there's something I wanted to read from the big book. I quite often read the stories at the back because I find them, they speak to me. And there's one on page, I'm reading 351, and it's a story called It Might Have Been Worse. And this is somebody describing how they were just before they came into AA, and it sums up how I felt just before I came into GreySheet. And it said, the last 2 years of my drinking, or in my case eating, was my entire personality changed to a cynical, intolerant, arrogant person, completely different from my normal self. It was at this stage of my life that resentment came in, resenting anyone and everything who might interfere with my personal plans and my way of doing things, especially for any interference in my drinking, or in my case eating. I was full of self-pity. And I think that last sentence, self-pity, I was so engrossed in that. And I'm so glad that's gone. And just in my last couple of seconds, I want to read further into the story. This man is now describing how the 12 steps have affected his life. And it says 12 steps, which to me are a spiritual way of living, soon meant honest thinking, not wishful thinking, open-mindedness. Sorry, I'll read that again. not wishful thinking, open-mindedness, a willingness to try, and a faith to accept. They meant patience, tolerance, humility, and above all, the belief in a power greater than myself could help. That power I chose to call God.
Time.
Thank you so much. So yeah, that's what we get through working the 12 steps. That's certainly been my experience of it, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.